Kujawsko-Pomorska e-Szkoła. Witamy po krótkiej przerwie. Z nami jest znowu pan Maciej Doksa. Witamy.
Dzień dobry. Good afternoon, students. In this lesson, we are going to talk about man-made disasters. In our previous lesson, today we talked about natural disasters. This time, disasters which are caused by human activity. All right, there are different types of man-made disasters. One of the most common are disasters connected with transport. For example, with planes, with aircraft. First of all, let me explain the word aircraft. Aircraft in English basically means any kind of, let's say, machine or vehicle that can fly. So aircraft is usually a plane, but it can also be a balloon. It can also be, I don't know, like for example, a glider, czyli szybowiec, so anything that can fly and is not a natural creature. So there are, as I said, disasters connected with aircraft, with planes. Of course, the most common is a plane crash. The plane can crash in different situations, in different circumstances. For example, the plane can crash during takeoff or landing. Unfortunately, most plane crashes take part during takeoff, czyli podczas startu, and during landing, podczas lądowania. But the planes can also collide mid-air when two planes hit each other. In the air, we say that they collided mid-air. Collide mid-air, czyli zderzyć się w powietrzu. Planes can also collide on the runway. The biggest ever plane disaster which happened, as far as I remember, in the Canary Islands was a collision of two planes on the runway. Also, a plane crash can be caused by a terrorist attack. So by a bomb which explodes on board. Explode on board, czyli wybuchnąć na pokładzie. So we say that a bomb exploded on board and the plane crashed. Of course, there are also other reasons for a plane crash. The plane can crash due to engine failure. What is engine failure? Engine failure, no to jest awaria silnika. Or some other mechanical failure. So it's not only the engine that can break down or that can fail, these can be also other parts of the plane which can malfunction. When there is an engine failure, very often the engine explodes and catches fire. Also, another dangerous situation which can cause a plane to crash is the situation when a plane hits a flock of birds. Flock of birds, czyli stado ptaków. Especially if they are big birds, they can be dangerous to the plane. They can destroy the engine, they can destroy the, let's call it windshield, czyli tą przednią szybę of the cabin, pilot's cabin. Also, the aircraft can crash due to difficult weather conditions. So due to some violent storm or hail or freezing condition, ice which can accumulate on the surface of the wings of the plane. And finally, a plane crash can be also caused by pilot's error, czyli błąd pilota. It also happens. Another type of transport disasters are disasters of trains. So again, two trains can collide if they are going along the same track but the opposite directions. Well, they can collide head-on. Actually, we had such a collision near Torun. You know, it was the biggest railway disaster in the history of Poland. So also we say that two trains can collide. There are different types of trains. So for example, two passenger trains can collide, or passenger train can collide with a cargo train or freight train. Freight train, czyli to jest to samo co cargo train, czyli pociąg towarowy. Also, a train can be derailed. What does it mean? Well, you know, when the train is moving, when the train is traveling, it goes along two rails. And sometimes, for some reasons, they can just get off the rails. In English, we say that the train was derailed, czyli wykolejony. Pociąg się wykoleił. Also, a train can hit a car on a level crossing. What is a level crossing? Level crossing is this point at which the cars cross the rails. And if the car driver is not careful, or the barriers on the level crossing don't function properly or malfunction, it can cause such an accident that the train can hit a car. It happens all the time. All right, let's move on to the transport disasters involving ships. So, what can happen to a ship? Well, the worst thing which can happen to a ship or to a ferry to prom, is sinking. Sink to tonąć. We say that the ship is sinking, the ferry is sinking. W czasie przeszłym the ship sank. Now, what can cause a ship to sink? Well, usually heavy seas, czyli wzburzone morze, storm, which is usually connected, with heavy seas, huge waves. The ship can also hit an iceberg, or it can hit the rocks when the ship is going, near the shore, near land, and it navigates in the wrong way. It can also hit the underwater rocks. Hitting an iceberg is quite rare, but the most famous ship disaster, sea disaster, the sinking of the Titanic, happened just after the ship hit an iceberg. The ship can also come ashore if there are strong winds and if there is a storm, huge waves, and if the steering system on the plane or the engine breaks down, fails, the ship can, or the captain of the ship, the navigator, can lose control of the ship and the ship can come ashore. No to jest, statek został wyrzucony na brzeg. Osiąść na mieliźnie, też można tak powiedzieć. When the ship is in trouble, it sends a distress signal or distress call, also known as an SOS. Here you don't see the word ship, you see the word vessel. Vessel in English is the same as the ship. Even in the Polish language we also have two words. We have okręt, we have statek. Well, basically it's the same thing, but there are two different words. So in English you also can say ship, but you can also use the word vessel. So the vessel can send a distress signal. Distress signal, no to jest wołanie o pomoc. Sygnał taki, to nie alarmowy, nie, to jest wołanie o pomoc. Distress signal, inna nazwa distress call, albo an SOS. Save our souls, ratujcie nasze dusze. Of course, that's an old expression, but it is still used. On the ship, I think on every bigger ship, there are lifeboats, czyli łodzie ratunkowe, which are used in the case that the ship is in danger and it starts sinking. People also can put on life jackets, czyli kamizelki ratunkowe. And if the ship sinks, the crew or the passengers of the ship, a lot of them can survive. And we call them the survivors, czyli ocaleni, and they can be rescued, uratowani, by the Coast Guard, czyli Straż Przybrzeżną, or they can be rescued by another vessel, another ship. Just like with the Titanic, about 1,500 people drowned, so died, but I don't remember, about 500 people were rescued. The survivors were rescued by another ship. All right, another type of disasters caused by human activities are construction disasters. So disasters of buildings, structures, and so on. So what can happen? Well, most typically a building or a bridge or another structure can collapse. Collapse, zawalić się. Why do buildings collapse? Why do bridges collapse? Well, they can collapse because of or due to construction error, czyli błąd w konstrukcji, engineering error, no, błąd w konstrukcji, w budowie danego obiektu, or a design flaw, wada konstrukcyjna, wada na etapie projektowania, so a design flaw. So, for example, they say that with Titanic, one of the reasons that Titanic sank was the design flaw, that it was made improperly and the design was not perfect. Also, another reason for such disaster can be material wear and tear. Wear and tear to jest takie wyrażenie, które oznacza zużycie, czyli zużycie materiału, material wear and tear. So, you know, after a long time of using the building, of using the bridge or another structure, construction, the material becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, and after some time it can break, causing a disaster. In English, when we want to say about the reasons of a disaster or a catastrophe, we say that the disaster or the catastrophe was due to, czyli została spowodowana czymś. Czyli możemy powiedzieć that catastrophe was due to a construction error, it was due to engineering error, it was due to the design flaw or to the material wear and tear. Or it can be due to heavy use, czyli intensywne użytkowanie. You know, if you have thousands or millions of cars using the bridge, you know, in a month, after some time of such heavy use, it can also, you know, collapse. It can lead to material wear and tear. Also overloading, especially with bridges, you know, if the bridges are overloaded, czyli przeładowane, which means there is too big weight or load, you know, affecting the bridge, well, it can also break and collapse. All right, another type of disasters are transport disasters on the roads, so involving cars, trucks, and vehicles which move on the roads. So the most common is a car crash or car accident or car collision. There are different types of car crashes. There are minor crashes. Minor crash, drobna stłuczka, drobny wypadek. But there are also major accidents with a lot of people dead or involving a lot of vehicles on the road. A type of minor crash, so very small car accident, is a fender bender. What is fender bender? Fender to jest zderzak w samochodzie, bend to jest zginać. So it's a situation when the two cars collide, but very, very, let's say, slightly. There isn't much damage. Usually only the fender, czyli zderzak, is bent, wgnieciony. In Polish we say stłuczka. Po angielsku oni na to mówią wyginacz zderzaków, tak? Fender bender. Ale oznacza to po prostu małą stłuczkę, taką delikatną stłuczkę. It was just a fender bender. Another type of car accident is a pile-up. Pile-up is an accident which involves a lot of cars, many cars. Pile-ups usually happen on highways when there are a lot of cars on two lanes traveling at very high speed, and when something happens, well, all those cars don't have time to, you know, stop to brake in time, and they start hitting each other. So if there are like 10 or, you know, 20 cars or 30 or sometimes even more cars involved, we call it a pile-up. Po polsku karambol. Head-on collision. It's a collision when two cars, you know, travel in opposite direction and hit each other, you know, at the front, czyli zderzenie czołowe. And when we talk about this, we can say that the two cars collided head-on. Head-on, czyli czołowo. What are the reasons of car accidents? Well, of course, there are many different reasons. One of them is jumping the red light. Jump the red light to jest przejechać na czerwonym. Tak po angielsku się mówi, jump the red light, jakby próbować przeskoczyć, tak, na czerwony. Speeding, so driving too quickly, too fast. Drunk driving, so driving when you're drunk. Yes, and of course there are other reasons like the weather, extreme weather conditions, you know, snow, ice, or some mechanical failure, and so on and so on. Of course, there are plenty of other disasters caused by human activities which we well, cannot really categorize because they are just specific for a specific type of human activity. But let's talk about them. A mining disaster. What's a mine? Well, a mine is this network of tunnels underground where people work and they try to get this kind of fossil fuel, coal, węgiel. They try to get it out. Mine to kopalnia, mining disasters, katastrofa w kopalni. So they do happen. Mining is a dangerous activity, so mining disaster, katastrofa w kopalni. Very often one of the types of mining disasters are gas explosions. Usually it is methane. Methane, czyli metan, eksplozje, wybuchy metanu, they are one of the reasons of the mining disasters. Another type of disaster is a gas leak, czyli wyciek gazu, which can also in the end lead to an explosion. You can also have chemical factory explosion, chemical factory disaster, when some dangerous poisonous substances are released into the air and they can kill people, they can injure people, they can kill or poison, you know, the animals, destroy the environment around the factory. There have been a lot of chemical factory disasters in the world. Another type of disaster is an act of terrorism. You know, there's been a lot of terrorist attacks recently, in recent years, so they can also be or can lead to some disasters involving a lot of casualties. Arson. Arson is a situation, it's a crime actually, it's a situation when somebody sets fire or starts fire. It can be a wildfire, well, not wildfire, it can be fire of a forest or fire of a building, so podpalenie. Another type of disaster which happens, for example, in winter or because of some extreme weather conditions is power outage or power failure or blackout. These three things, these three terms mean the same. To jest awaria prądu, wyłączenie prądu, przerwa w dostawie. Power outage, so the power is out, power failure or blackout. These three expressions mean the same. Right now in Texas, they're having a huge problem with it. Another type of disaster caused by human activity is an oil leak, also called an oil spill. So when you have, for example, oil tanker, czyli tankowiec z ropą, or you have an oil pipeline, czyli rurociąg. When the oil tanker sinks or breaks, there is a huge leak of oil into the sea. We call it oil spill, czyli rozlew ropy, plama ropy. When a pipeline, rurociąg, breaks, you can also have a lot of oil spill and, well, it can also lead to some explosions. But usually it is extremely dangerous to the natural environment because this oil poisons the life, the wildlife, and pollutes the area. Chemical pollution and contamination. Pollution, zanieczyszczenie, contamination, skażenie. So this is often connected with the chemical factory disasters, they very often, or not only disaster, but also activity. You know, activity of some chemical factory can lead to pollution and contamination of the entire area. Another quite drastic or impressive disaster is a disaster at the nuclear power plant. We all remember or know the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster. This can result in radioactive contamination, czyli skażenie radioaktywne. It's dangerous to people, animals, and the biggest problem is that it is extremely hard to remove this contamination. It usually stays for hundreds or even thousands of years, like the area around Chernobyl, you know, contaminated for hundreds of years, almost forever. All right, so that would be it about man-made disasters, so disasters caused by man, by human activity, by our civilization. Now, after these two lessons, I'm sure that you will be able to talk or write about disasters in English quite well. Thank you very much and see you next time. Bye.
Dziękujemy panu za lekcję. Jeszcze kilka drobnych komentarzy od Alicji. Bardzo dobrze pan tłumaczy, oraz od Jana. Super pan tłumaczy, z 3 wykrzyknikami.
Dziękuję bardzo wszystkim.